I'm going to talk a little bit more about plot. I've already given you a plot map, which is a 10-page PowerPoint that you could look at to see how I see a plot. I want you to see where I got this from. This is a book by a guy named Sid Field. It's called Screenwriter's Workbook, and it's got a lot of interesting stuff in it. One of the things it's got in it is something that I have taken and adapted. I've been using this for nearly 30 years. Here's another way to look at it. You've got Act 1, which is the setup. Plot point 1 happens in Act 1. Act 2, which is 60 to 75% of your story, is the confrontation. And it's not until you get well into Act 2 that you get plot point 2. Act 3 is the resolution. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a 1-page story, a 20-page story, a 200-page story. It doesn't matter. You've got a formula. You've got to set up your story. You've got to complicate it. You've got to have a confrontation. And it's got to get resolved in the end. So, here's the map. That's what it looks like. Now, let's see. This is like working in a reverse mirror. I'm going to show you something else that I've done. This is a storyboard for a film that I'm working on. It's supposed to be about 120 pages long. Each page in a film translates to 1 minute of screen time. So 120 pages of screenplay, and I've got it all mapped out here. Starting at the very beginning, bit by bit, I've described what's going to happen everywhere along the way throughout the entire film. Now, if I think about it in terms of Act 1, that's going to be right here. Somewhere in the first 10 minutes of the film, something has to happen, and I've got to hook my audience. If it doesn't happen and they don't get hooked, I don't have a very good story, do I? Act 2 follows hard on the heels of Act 1 and takes up most of the rest of the action. It's going to build and build and build until plot point 2 happens, and then finally, and this won't happen until the last 10 minutes of the film probably, Act 3. Most of the film is Act 2. Most of the film is setting up not setting up, the setup comes at the very beginning, but most of the film takes place in Act 2. I have a problem, it gets more and more complicated, and then it gets more complicated, and my hero's in terrible danger, and it's not until the end that I know how he's going to work out of it. Okay, you get the idea? Now, this is a very busy storyboard, but it's a 2-hour story that I'm working on here. If I were to reduce this to a short story, I would reduce it to, instead of 30 scenes, I would probably have no more than 6 or 8 scenes. A scene is an emotional transaction. You have one state of mind coming into a scene, and then something happens during that scene and the state of mind changes. For example, I come in and I see my wife and we're all happy, and I say something and it pisses her off. And all of a sudden she's mad at me and I'm saying, "What did I say? What did I say?" That's a scene with an emotional transaction. If you go into a scene and out of a scene and nothing has changed emotionally, your story's not working. It's got to change emotionally throughout the scenes. The idea of a screenplay is that you're going to have 30 scenes before it's over. Setup is going to be the first few scenes. Then, in all, a total of 30 scenes. Alright, now, I hope this is helping a little bit. I want to see your stories. But think about the structure of this thing. It's just like a lyric poem in some regards. You have to decide on the rhythm, you have to decide on what's going to go where, and you have to construct it carefully. The last thing you want to do is bore me. Remember that. If I get bored, if I fall asleep, if I don't finish reading your story, that's a sad ending.